Let's go.
Why did we do a podcast about wings and not about cop rock?
I know. Probably. I don't know how many episodes of Cop Rock are out there, but
Yeah, there's not that many. We should do a spin-off.
yeah.
Just another day behind the dash of this garbage cop machine.
With another load of human trash and a broken down routine. Oh, paper piling time by the minute.
Oh, low life spilling out the door.
Garbage in and garbage out.
Ain't no
Stopping how it goes. No stopping.
one
Dirty job there.
ain't no
Doubt garbage in.
Hey, garbage out, garbage out.
Cliff and Norf.
Climm and Norf.
Climm and Norf. Cliff and Norf. Cliff and Norm. Climm and Norf. Cliff and Norf.
Climm and Norf. Climm and Norf.
Climm and Norf.
Garbage out.
Cliff and Norf. Climm and Norf.
Welcome back to Wings Nuts, the program that talks about every episode of classic 90s sitcom Wings. We hope we can borrow your ears for a little while, even though your face belongs to Noxzema. I'm Jared, here with Emerson. Hi, Emerson.
Hey, what's up, Jared? How you doing?
Oh, just fantastic. How about you?
I'm great. I'm home early from work. The sun is actually out. Like, I'm seeing sunlight through the windows. When we're done here, I'm probably gonna go on a long walk around Glendale and just kind of enjoy the terrain.
No vitamin D over here. So today we are talking about the episode Story of Joe, which was released October 5th, 1990. And this is the second episode of the second season, 2 and 2 Chuck Woolery.
IMDb plot summary. A reporter comes to Nantucket to do a story on Joe, but when he talks to Brian and hears some of his stories, he decides to interview him, and Joe is upset.
I don't think he formally decided to interview Brian instead, but they just kind of hit it off.
Yeah, they had an instant rapport, and in fact, like, I have notes about that. Like, Ted Cobb was kind of a dick, but him and
Yes.
Brian were getting along, and Joe just was like more. Apparently, he just assumed that this article would feature like a front cover.
Yeah, so
I think the A plot is the reporter, and then the B plot kind of is Norman Cliff just kind of wandering through Nantucket.
yes, spoiler alert, we have Norman Cliff guest starring on this episode.
That's
So
right,
cheers.
which leads into some of the talent.
I kind of knew that we had a Norman Cliff cameo in the season that we could look forward to. I didn't expect it so soon.
Yeah, agreed. I was kind of surprised that it came this early, although, you know, in hindsight, not that surprised, because I feel like they're in season 2. They're like actually putting some like effort behind it, and I think that in doing so, the network's probably like, we got to have a crossover. We got to like really establish that this is in the same universe, because apparently it's supposed to be like in the same Cheers universe. Yeah, I kind of like the cameo.
Before we get into all of that business, though, let's review some of the talent behind the scenes of this episode. We had Noam Pitlick directing again, and we've kind of, because he's directed previous episodes, we haven't dived deep into him, but I just wanted to highlight one of his projects that he's done outside of Wings, which is a pilot for a David Seltzer-produced TV show called The Eligible Dentist. And apparently this show featured Gene Wilder as the dentist and Wallace Shawn. And I found a great blog post written by Adam Sobsey, and he was a PA on the show at the time. And he described the plot of the show as it came from a story that Gene Wilder told to the producer about how he would kind of talk to the ghost of Gilda Radner, and he would touch in with her every day. And so that spun off this show where this dentist speaks to his deceased wife, who's like a ghost that appears to him. And I'm like, doesn't that sound really cool?
Yeah. So would this be like mid to late 80s? Since Gilda Radner passed away like in the 80s, right?
Yes. Actually, this was, I think, 93.
Oh, wow, that late. Okay.
Gene Wilder, obviously a movie star. I can't imagine how a show like this couldn't get picked up.
Yeah, was Gene Wilder that active in the 90s? I don't remember seeing him in a lot of movies.
His career really was winding down by then.
Did he semi-retire after Gilda Radner passed away and everything? I mean, that would be devastating, man.
Yeah, it must be a situation like that. But I would have loved to have seen The Eligible Dentist.
Absolutely.
And then this episode was written by Bruce Rasmussen, and he's a writer-producer guy. He's worked on Dweebs, Norm, and not Norm from Cheers, the Norm Macdonald vehicle, The Drew Carey Show.
Oh, yeah, the Norm Macdonald Show. Good show.
Yes, remember that one? Without a Trace, Claws, and he's currently kind of producing The Connors.
Okay, cool.
We have Roz Doyle producing again.
Roz Doyle, yes.
Yeah. And I read a little more on her, and apparently she got the call that she had terminal cancer while she was in the editing bay for the pilot of Wings.
Wow. Imagine that. She's looking at an airport terminal, and she finds out that she's got terminal. Sorry,
Yes.
that is a bad take.
That's dark.
That's dark. That's really a bummer. I love that they named Roz after her on Frasier, which is a really I'm such a sappy sucker. I'm so touched by little tributes.
Yeah, it's a sweet tribute, and it also saves the writer's time in thinking up a new name.
I think it's in Secret of the Ooze that they dedicate it to Jim Henson at the end.
Oh.
And I was like, that's really sweet. I don't know. It's corny, but I like it.
And you touched on this, but we had some guest stars. Obviously, George Wendt and John Ratzenberger as the memorable twosome Cliff and Norm.
Yep. John Ratzenberger, famous for being the pig in Toy Story. He's great. I love that he's had a voice role in I think almost every Pixar movie.
No kidding.
And even in Cars, if you watch past the end credits, they have all the Toy Story characters as Cars.
Oh, okay.
And the John Ratzenberger character in Cars is I think he plays a truck, and he's watching at a drive-in theater, and he's making comments about the characters that he's played in car form. It's really fun.
Yeah, I'm not watching past the end credits of Cars. I'm not watching past the first credit roll of Cars.
I actually really like Cars. I think Cars is a great movie.
I don't know. I have an aversion to anthropomorphic vehicles because what universe is this where cars are alive, and why does their world look so much like our world?
Pitiful human, roll out. You don't respect the Transformers either, I'm guessing.
Well, at least they came from space, so they have a backstory that kind of makes sense.
Hey, what didn't come from space, man? Fucking Stardust, dude.
Do you recall our other guest spot from this episode?
It's the reporter Ted Cobb, and I actually looked up his name, but I hope you did more research. I was kind of banking on that.
Yeah, it's Charles Halligan.
Famous for being the first crew member that dies in The Thing, is that right?
Yeah, no, he was Norris in The Thing.
Oh man, he's so good in The Thing. He's great in this. I love that. I love his character in this episode.
Yes. His IMDb bio is obviously written by his son. He notes that he has played a lot of cops in his career. He had a reoccurring role on Grace Under Fire, and I remember him from this great TV miniseries called Wild Palms, which was touted as kind of the LA Twin Peaks.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, it's really good. It stars Jim Belushi, but it's
no kidding.
Very good show.
What era would that have been?
It was right around this time, actually. It was mid 90s ish.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that sounds actually really interesting.
Shall we talk headlines?
Let's do it.
Yeah. So we like to highlight news stories from the era. And so we're going to look at the October 5th edition of the Boston Globe. I'll kick us off here. The first headline I clocked was Soviets bear larger share in destroying nuclear arms. And this article was about the SMART treaty back in the day there. And basically, hey, the USSR, NATO, and the United States are going to have a treaty to reduce armaments, particularly nuclear armaments. This was signed by Bush back in the day. It was an era when tensions were loosening and we were disarming and treaties were being signed. And now we're, of course, in an era where treaties are being thrown in the rubbish and it's heightened tension. So interesting contrast.
Well, I just think it's good that Russia's getting rid of their nuclear arms.
Yes.
So on page 14, we have a political cartoon. We have John Kerry, who would go on to be the presidential candidate in 2004. And we have Rappaport, which I'm not exactly sure that is, but this is a comic that they could probably teach in Political Comics 101, where the left side is John Kerry espousing all of his experience and accomplishments, and the right side is Rappaport / Caruso / any number of rich idiots.
Yes.
And so like Kerry's going, I have experience in the U.S. Senate and in state government, and he goes on like that for like a full couple paragraphs, and then Rappaport goes, I have lots of money.
God. Beats a swift boat challenger. But yeah, you referenced Caruso. I'm just so happy that we found a way for a multimillionaire to lose $100 million and not even buy the mayor's seat.
It's good for the economy.
I chuckled at this article, the headline, 5 Massachusetts judges disciplined for short days. So basically you had a couple judges that were like leaving at 1 or 2 in the afternoon. They got penalized, they got fined, they had their vacation reduced. They particularly talked about this one Judge Fallon and how he wrote an apology letter. And
Jimmy Fallon?
I forget his first name, but Justice Fallon. And I just find it so funny that these judges are getting shamed and embarrassed for skipping out of work early.
Yeah, it's pretty silly. Like that would barely even like make waves nowadays. Did they also pay by credit card for underage hookers? No, but they left early. Yeah, but did they also like snort cocaine off of a Qatari slave's butt cheeks? No, but they left early. You don't understand it. They left before they were supposed to.
We paid them an 8-hour day. We didn't get an 8-hour day.
Fuck the World Cup.
Wait, where'd that come from? Fuck the World Cup.
Qatar.
Oh, yeah.
Or is it Qatar? I don't know how to pronounce it.
Qatar. Yeah.
Welcome back.
It kills me how they like built the whole like stadium and stuff for that with straight up slave labor.
Mm-hmm.
And a ton of people died building that. But hey, it's for a big soccer match.
They've been posting signs like the guides if you're going to the World Cup, and it's like, don't wear rainbows, don't wear this, respect other cultures beside your own. Like, realize that not everybody wants to see rainbow, which is so blind. It's weird. It's crazy. So on page 41, we got a headline: Miller's Crossing unearths a deep, darker underworld. Have you seen Miller's Crossing?
Years ago, yeah.
Ooh, I love that movie. It's just one of those like great gangster noir era, like, you know, I think it's like set in the 1920s, and it's just like Gabriel Byrne kind of like playing every side against each other. It's such a good, smart, wonderful movie. John Turturro is like so good in it.
What was the gist of the article? Was it a review?
It's a review, yeah. And they talk about how good it is. See, when I was a kid, I grew up we had the LA Times and the Daily News here in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And my family chose the dumber one, which is called the Daily News. Also, we were from the Valley, so I think the Daily News might have had more Valley focus. But what the Daily News did that the LA Times didn't is they would write, you know, like a full article review, but then they would also include the star rating.
Oh.
The LA Times didn't, and neither does the Boston Globe until like the following Thursday when
hey, you gotta have the rating, gotta have those stars.
I like having that quick guide. I like to be like look at it real quick and be like, okay, cool. Yeah, so they're saying to watch it. Or,
I grew up in the Bay Area where we had the San Francisco Chronicle, and their rating system was a man in a chair. So you had to like, I think it was a 5-star system. A 0, so like a 1-star would be like the chair's empty. A 2-star would be the guy's sleeping in the chair. A 3-star is he's like a little interested. A 4-star was like he's perked up and leaning forward. And then a 5-star is he's jumping in the chair.
Holy shit, that's real?
Yeah.
That's fucking great.
That's the San Francisco Chronicle's film rating system.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Okay, I noted this headline. Philippines rebels claim large island. And, I guess armed forces, a colonel actually in the Philippines led in insurgents and armed forces, broke away the island Mindanao and declared independence. Tensions were high in the Philippines, as they often are, and the president, Corazon Aquino, was kind of fearing a coup d'etat, but I guess a few days later, the leader, Colonel Alexander Noble, surrendered and was arrested, and that was the end of that.
Oh, crazy. I found the Miller's Crossing blurb review from the following Thursday.
Okay.
4 stars. Somber, powerful, stylistically stunning prohibition gangster movie that seems pop culture dream curling hypnotically up from our collective psyche. It's not just visuals. There's a satisfying moral weight in its hard-boiled postmodern take on an underworld where you can either have a heart or have a hat, but not both. Terrific performances from Gabriel Byrne's taciturn gang knight, Albert Finney's regal boss, and John Turturro's double-crossing weasel.
Wow.
And that is at the bottom right corner of the paper, so that's when the scans are the worst.
Yes.
Things get blurry down there.
It sounds like that movie's almost as good as House Party.
You know what? It's half a star better, believe it or not.
Whoa. Is it as good as Ninja Turtles, though?
I mean, no, but we can pretend that it is.
There's an article just citing that David Souter was confirmed to the Supreme Court. So that happened. And I liked this headline, House votes death penalty for traffickers. So the House of Representatives wanted to give drug traffickers the death penalty. But I'm pretty sure this didn't pass the Senate because I don't think it's a law now, because I just remember Trump, when he was in office, when he was running, I believe, and he called for the death penalty for drug traffickers, and it got a lot of hay in the media. So I'm pretty sure that's not currently the law of the land.
Wow. Yeah. I'm not really aware of it either way.
Last headline I have from the Boston Globe is the U.S. is said to detect Iraqi effort to mobilize terror groups. And this article quotes senior officials, White House officials, and those are the only people quoted. And they're basically accusing Saddam Hussein of trying to sponsor terrorist attacks. And this one official alleges they have a new weapon, and he just sounds like a nut. He's like, hey, yeah, they got this like small weapon, and it makes an explosion that's like a nuclear explosion several miles long. And it just, obviously, I don't think Saddam Hussein ever had such a weapon, or he probably would have used it and not ended up in a rat hole years later. Mm-hmm. But it just reminds me of the time. Do you remember when Bush lied in his first presidential address and he held up a bag of crack cocaine on air and said, like, this was purchased just across the park, across the street at Lafayette Park? Now we know years later it was totally set up. They wrote the speech and then said, like, well, we have to have this drug bust. So the DEA totally set it up and entrapped a high school kid and got him to sell them crack.
I'm pretty sure that was real.
You're pretty sure the bomb Hussein had was real?
No, the drug bust.
It was a real drug bust, but they orchestrated it so that it would happen. And prior to that,
they were just on there. They just knew. They saw it. They caught it.
Previous to that, there had never been a drug bust in Lafayette Park.
They were saving it for that one moment.
That one moment, yeah.
I believe Bush.
Okay.
Oh,
George
yeah.
H.W. Bush?
Yeah, name of Bush. Yeah. Bush's beans. Sometimes the world is just as you see it.
And I found one interesting article in Nantucket's own Inquirer and Mirror. The headline was, "Plane crash near Altar Rock kills pilot and passenger."
Oh no.
Yeah, so that happened. There was a small aircraft from Nantucket, and it crashed on a region of Nantucket called Altar Rock. So I couldn't help but imagine, like, you know, if this was in the world of wings, that would have been either one of Joe's planes or one of Roy's planes.
Yeah, oh God.
Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers. I was gonna say I would hope I don't hope that for either of them.
Yes.
I was gonna say that I hope that it was one of Roy's because he's got more to spare, but I don't want loss of life for either of them. Yeah, I mean Roy doesn't fly. Roy's got pilots that we never see.
And the crash was kind of blamed on weather conditions, and eyewitnesses said they saw the plane flying at like a abnormally low altitude.
Okay, interesting.
One of the victims was actually from La Cañada Flint Ridge.
No kidding. Yeah, that's where I went to school.
When I get really angry at the United States, I just threaten to move to La Cañada.
Well, I found I'm going through the Nantucket paper now, and there's an advertisement on page 26. It's the fashion shop at Marine Home Center. Pump up the volume. It's party time. Set your sights for fashion and fun at our choreographed fashion show, Sunday, October 7th, 4 p.m. at The Muse. Find out what dressing is all about as we rock and roll to the fashions of today. Add to your wardrobe with their door prices. Grand prize, $50 gift certificate. Oh, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall at that thing. That'd be so great to watch.
Fashion shows generally aren't for me, but if you're telling me there's choreography, count me in.
Yeah. Oh my God. Which is like such a funny thing because I feel like Get Alive had an episode about this, and other shows have like episodes that are set at malls with fashion shows, and I think that's such a funny thing. To me, they don't exist outside of those sitcoms, but I think they were real.
When I was a kid, I was in a mall fashion show.
Really?
I think it was at like Macy's or JCPenney, and we were shopping, and then someone who worked there asked if we wanted to come back, like me and my brother, to be in a fashion show. And I did it, and I like remember I was hoping to get paid or like get the outfit I got to try on, and I just like got nothing for it.
Wow, that sucks.
Yeah, just showed up to do free child labor for JCPenney.
Just got gawked at by a bunch of middle-aged idiots. Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, you wear the shit out of that pajama bottoms or whatever the hell it was. This is the first time that we're seeing a different city as the opening establishing shot. We have Logan Airport.
Yes.
It looks like an early 90s airport.
I almost fell out of my chair when I'm like, we're in Boston? What the?
Yeah. You could see the smog just filling the air.
Yes.
That's the reality of airports, is that the air pollution is awful.
And it looked like they purchased some stock footage of the airport.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, maybe they just stole it. I didn't realize until my second watch through that Ted Cobb's sitting on the airplane.
Yes, yeah.
He's got the first line.
Yeah. And then he just kind of sits back while we're introduced to Norm and Cliff entering the plane. They're trying to bring a case of beer on, and they won't let him. And Cliff's sitting right up there in the cockpit right next to Brian, and he kind of rubs Brian the wrong way.
They're really like playing up the idea, like, because I know that like on Cheers, Cliff kind of is that like go-to sort of like talking, hot air and a little bit annoying, but they're really playing it up in this episode.
He's the know-it-all who always has useless information that may or may not be correct.
Also, how big is Norm's crate of beer that they can't just put it by his feet on the airplane?
I thought it was maybe a 12-pack or one of those really long 18-packs.
Yeah, right? Like, I don't know. Makes for a few more jokes. The Teamsters won't drink the beer. They'll protect it and everything.
And he ends up pulling a can out of his pocket anyways.
Yes, he does. And I actually went onto a Wings fan page on Facebook to ask them if they could identify the beer. Nobody could, but...
Oh, interesting.
Which is because you know what? from like the brief appearance you see of it, that could be a craft beer can today, but it's, obviously 1990.
Yes.
And the craft beer game wasn't that strong in America. So it's like, it's kind of fun to think about what that beer could be, or if it was just like a prop, like they just put like a label over like an existing can.
His bear paw was well covering it, so it could have been seltzer water for all we know.
Yeah. Also, Ted Cobb has a quick line before Norm and Cliff appear. Hey, Mac, when are we going to get this crate off the ground? Is crate like a derisive term toward airplanes?
I think so, yeah.
You know what I thought about? I don't know if this is like a good time to bring this up, but does Joe have satellite offices at all these other airports? Since they're flying in from Boston to Nantucket, that means that like they bought a plane ticket on Sandpiper Air in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And so Sandpiper Air must have like satellite, counters. They must have like phase in other airports.
Yeah, because generally airlines have their own counter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's maybe like a general counter that can service some of the smaller airlines.
I was wondering the same thing. Yeah, I was going to say, like, I wonder if there's like a kind of independent one that kind of handles ticketing for like a number of different airlines.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I noticed, I mean, this is jumping ahead, but I don't think that any of their passengers fly back to Boston on Sandpiper Air.
Yeah, and when Norm and Cliff fly back, they go on Aeromass.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like Norm, Cliff, and Ted all fly out when Tim Daly, when Joe and Brian are like, on screen doing other things. So
yeah, Joe was up in the air. That's towards the end of the episode where he was kind of depressed and just took off on his own.
Just like Tom Cruise in Top Gun.
Just going for a joyride, burning like $1,000 worth of jet fuel.
You know what I was comparing it to, though, is when Tom Cruise is on his motorcycle just cruising around.
Like you said, the A story is Ted Cobb coming to interview Joe. And at the start of things, Joe's kind of nervous at the counter, looking forward to this interview. So excited that he's going to score this interview with American Flyer and it'll make his business just take off. Roy comes up to him and is acting like, oh, yeah, that dumb magazine. They tried to interview me.
They've been after me for months to do an article, but I'm too busy. I guess when they realized I wouldn't be at their beck and call, they went to their B list. When that didn't pan out, they went to you.
You know what I love about this, too, is that Joe's talking to Helen about it at the counter, sitting at the counter. When he's talking about it, you can clock Roy in the background, eavesdropping, and, like, that's when he kind of devises his whole, like, prying for information, trying to play it cool and stuff. Mm-hmm. Also, I want to say off the top of the episode, I think Roy's the MVP of this. He had some of my favorite moments.
Yeah, and jealousy is an interesting motif of this episode because Joe's jealous that Brian and Ted Cobb hit it off, and Roy's jealous that he's not being interviewed.
I also had the thought when Joe's sitting there just like scrubbing the silverware. We have really, really hard water here in Glendale, and so often like my dishes that I leave to dry will like have like little discoloration spots. I'm like, you just gotta live with that. You gotta be okay with it.
Yeah, water spots never scared me away from a spoon.
there's the quote, water spots never scared me away from a spoon. YOLO.
But I think you're right. Like Roy had opportunity to have many shades of character. The way he plays jealousy is so funny in this. Like when Joe's annoyed later and Roy's like, hey, did he ask anything about me? And yeah, Roy, Ted said you're the sexiest man he'd ever seen. And Roy's face is just gobsmacked by that.
That's my favorite line of the whole episode.
Oh, that was the line. Yeah.
Yeah, he goes like, he said that you're the sexiest man alive. And Roy kind of like stands there gobsmacked, like as you say, and he goes, really? Like, and it's so funny, like ambiguously, like I can't tell if he's like disturbed by it, but also like secretly pleased. Like he's like you can see his like circuits working, like going like, well, how do I use this to my advantage, kind of.
When Ted Cobb and Joe retreat to the office for the interview, Ted Cobb just couldn't give a fuck. His favorite job was writing for Mercenary Monthly, and he hates this job because he doesn't do cute. He doesn't do human interest stories. So they're off to a bad start.
Yeah, like immediately he's just a dick. My editor's aunt wrote on your airline and she thought I'd make a cute story, whatever. And Joe's like, trying to like show off the airport, so he like opens up a window to show Lowell working on his airplane.
Lowell's out there fixing the fuel line, but then what happens?
You get that great physical like moment where Lowell like slips, hits himself on like the fuselage, and then falls down. It's a really funny spill.
I like how he does a little wave and then just slips. It's a great pratfall.
And then we forgot to do Brian's tire report.
No time like the present.
Brian's Tire Report.
So I wrote down, it looks almost like Japanese art.
Yes, I like that take. I feel like, this assignment of Brian's Tire Report I feel like we're in art history class describing abstract expressionism, because it wasn't, an image. It was kind of, like you said, Japanese art. It was kind of bluish, silverish, blackish, whitish, kind of cloudy, wavy things.
Because like you get a closer look at it at some point, and you can kind of see like sort of like in the tan area of the tie, it's like kind of like the thin lines that you would find like in like a piece of like Japanese silk art with like different colors. And also we only get one tie to the whole episode.
I will admit, I prefer when he has like an ice cream tie.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
When we get into these abstract patterns, like if it was going to be Japanese art, I would much prefer like a Japanese walking painting, those kind of wide scope images where you just see like a village and a city and people, pathways and stuff.
Oh, or like imagine like a tie with just like sumo wrestlers
Yes.
stacked. That'd be beautiful.
Or that painting you see in bathrooms of like the big wave.
Yeah. Well, that's what this reminded me of actually, is like that painting of the big wave.
Okay.
Like the color choices and like that kind of like the lining in like the tan area reminded me of like that specific style of that big wave artwork.
Yes. And you brought this up. Can we touch on Joe's fantasy sequences throughout?
Oh.
He kind of looks up and it doodaloo, 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 doodaloo. We see him fantasizing about his face on the magazine.
Yeah. So he's like imagining this reporter coming to interview him for like a 3-page article about having an airline, and he imagines himself like front and center on the cover of the magazine, like looking like
an aviator.
Yeah, like an aviator. That's
like,
great.
Like Tom Cruise in Top Gun, steely-eyed looking off on the horizon.
Yes.
As things start going bad for him with this interview, we get different iterations of the fantasy. At one point, it's his face dissolves and it's Brian.
Yeah.
With
What,
Brian's
the
tie
scar?
blowing over his shoulder.
Oh, is it that what it was? Yeah. It's like Brian's tie flowing over his shoulder like a scarf. So Brian comes in and Brian like recognizes Ted Cobb's name and he goes, "Oh man, like writer for Mercenary magazine. You wrote a 4-part article about sucking wounds and stuff."
Yeah. Are we surprised that Brian subscribes to Mercenary Monthly?
No. Or that he lived like on the island of, was it Moonbeak?
Yes, he lived on a Caribbean island. Excuse me, Caribbean island.
Yeah, I don't know how to say that word correctly.
I think it depends on whether you're at Disneyland or not.
Gotta be in.
Yeah, I can picture Brian like naked except for socks, sitting on the couch, his feet up, a beer in one hand, and just reading Mercenary Monthly.
100%.
Norm and Cliff, they're the B story, and they're ostensibly in Nantucket to go on a fishing trip. But, first we see them having a beer at Helen's counter.
Yeah. Okay. I had so many thoughts on this. I'm pretty sure that this whole episode takes place over the course of one day. When Norm cracks that beer, it's gotta be like 7 o'clock in the morning or something. Right? Because later he's like they're both sitting at Helen's counter drinking another beer. After that, we see them at a club car Joe like makes a comment like, what are you guys doing here? It's after 1 o'clock. Why aren't you on the water? So if it's only after 1 o'clock at that point, that means that the previous 2 times that we saw them drinking beer must have been hours earlier. So
Yes.
are they like upping the ante on how much of an alcoholic Norm and Cliff are?
There's no other way to put it. They're going drinking. They're not really going fishing.
Yeah, because like we had that great line at the end when like
Definitely want to come back here, though. Yeah. I think next time we should actually go fishing. What, and ruin a perfectly good fishing trip?
I was thinking also that like my uncle Steve would have like loved so many moments of this episode. Like there's a moment at the end with Cliff and Norf
Climm and Norf.
Climm and Norf, Cliff and Norm, Climm and Norf coming back into the airport, and like they're like going, no, it's this big, you know, holding their hands like a foot apart. No, it was this big, holding their hand like a foot and a half apart. It's revealed that they're talking about the seafood platter that they
And
had.
not a fish they caught.
My uncle would have been like slapping his knee and been like, oh, that's a great joke. It is a great joke.
Is that your uncle that does like swap meets and stuff?
Yep, that's my uncle. Well, he used to. He's retired now.
Very cool. And I think, though, my favorite joke from Norm and Cliff was when, and by the way, we get the club car again. So it's so great to see the
Yes.
club car make its second appearance. in
Big time.
Wings. Yeah. But my favorite moment is when Joe and Helen walk in there and Cliff is like holding up a clam and he has a pointer stick and he's pointing to it.
Therefore, the clam is the only bivalve with an erogenous zone. It's located right here under the scumpus.
Out of everything Cliff knows, I'm just so impressed that he knows about clam sexuality.
I like looked it up to see if there was any validity to it, because you never know with like a Cliffism. And I mean, clams are bivalves, but I couldn't find anything indicating their erogenous zone.
Maybe that's something Cliff learned just from experience. Do you think he's been like jacking off clams or something?
Trying to get them to breed.
I would hate to have clam chowder at his house.
Oh my god. Well, yeah, the thing about clam chowders, you know, most people use whole milk or cream, you know. I prefer personally to use just human cum. By the way, I just emailed you a Google Maps link with the street view. This is the establishing shot before the club car scene. And I found like the exact location on Google Maps, which is just down the street from the club car on Nantucket.
Oh, okay.
Did they even preamble it? Is it just kind of like they show that shot and then they show the club car and then they show Joe and Helen entering, right? Where she's like, oh, it was so nice of you to ask me to lunch.
Yes, and because Joe has taken Helen to lunch,
Yeah.
but really his whole reasoning was he was jealous that Brian and Ted had gone to lunch and he wanted to.
He's hoping that somehow like he'll find the right moment or the right thing to say that will win Ted back for him.
Yeah, because Ted is just enthralled by Brian's stories of flying bikini models around, and Joe is intent on impressing Ted.
Yeah, it's a bummer. It's a bit of a
Yes.
bummer. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's easy to like judge this from like a third party point of view, you know, 30 years after it happened, or, you know, after it didn't actually happen, because this is all fictional. But yeah, like I kind of was like hoping that Joe would have like a little bit more like self-respect, kind of realize right away, oh, this guy is like not my guy, and just like kind of like fuck off.
Yeah, but it also like ties into, you know, we've talked about how are Joe and Brian two sides of the same soul, and the jealousy is something that's obviously popped its head up before. Usually it's with Carol or Helen, and
Yes, yeah.
now it's more just, you know, Joe is kind of jealous he doesn't have the swag Brian has and isn't as exciting and cool.
Right. Which, I mean, I guess is easy like to say it from the outside perspective, but like if I was there, I would clock that reporter dude and Brian are getting along and be like, yeah, let's let Brian take this one.
Yeah, they could get a great splashy story from Brian's point of view too.
Yeah, like maybe pull Brian aside real quick and be like, hey bud, do you mind like just, you know, talking some good about Sandpiper Air, you know? You know, obviously this dude's like you and him get along.
When Ted is off calling his editor, Joe and Brian have a little spat, and Joe's confronting Brian about how, oh, you always steal things from me, and now you're stealing this interview from me. But Brian reveals that he's been singing Joe's praises the whole time and giving Ted a lot of information about Joe.
Brian gets like a lot of humanity in this one. Like he's like proved to be like really like he's talking nice about Joe to the reporter. Joe accuses him of like trying to steal focus at his Catholic ceremony, whatever it's called.
Baptism or
confirmation.
Confirmation.
He's like, I had an asthma attack,
Yes.
Like it's like clear that like, in some instances Joe's making accusations about Brian that are not true. And then like that moment at the end when he like whispers to the empty room, sometimes I wish I was more like you too. Steven Weber doesn't get to be the MVP of this episode because spends the time being like a pretty decent human being.
And we do end on that sentimental note.
Wing, 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 wing.
Oh,
Wing, 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 wing.
damn, the phone's ringing. Okay. Hello?
Yeah. Hello?
Hey, this is Wings Nuts. Who am I talking to?
God damn it. So it's fucking true that you guys are doing a whole goddamn podcast about that shitty little airline that like couldn't even fill an article back in 1990.
Yeah, I mean, what's your problem? People like to kind of feel nostalgic, revisit old popular culture, and talk about it.
My name is Ted Cobb. I'm a reporter. I'm a goddamn great reporter. I used to write for Mercenary magazine back in the 80s, Then I got fired for a little bit of office and propriety, God damn it, people are so uptight back in the 80s.
Well, hey, I never read it. I'm sure your work's good.
Goddamn right it's good.
I'm really intrigued. You're a writer, and you wanted to talk to us?
So you guys are basically doing like an hour-long radio program every week about this airline. That, like, I went there, I flew to Nantucket on the goddamn airline, and it was so boring that I couldn't even fill an article about it. I had to fly off and cover a jelly bean convention instead, because that was more interesting.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that, but like, I can give you different angles. We have a lot of angles on it. Like, I don't see how you couldn't have made Sandpiper Air interesting. It's, maybe it's something about you. Maybe you're
Did
just
anybody
not digging
die?
deep. Well,
Were there
no.
any stakes?
Yes,
Yeah?
humans. There's human stakes, human interest.
Well, you know what happened at the jelly bean convention?
What happened?
An old lady choked to death on a jelly bean. Now that's a goddamn story.
Well, all right. I mean, that sounds like a tragedy.
Hundreds of people nearby. Nobody did a goddamn thing. She just lied there, choking to death, writhing in agony the whole time. Oh, man. These things just write themselves. I wrote 7 pages about it. It was great.
Well, you gotta
Fucking editor cut me down to 1 page.
Ted, you gotta find a way to make the innocuous, simple details of life interesting. Like, it's a tragedy that the woman died. What if all you had in your notepad was a story on the guy who won the how many jelly beans are in the jar competition? You have to find a way to make that interesting.
Hey, what's your name, Jarred?
Hi, I'm Jarred.
You're alive, right? You're a living human being. I'm assuming you're talking to me.
As of today, yes.
Yeah, you know what you and every other living human being on this planet does every day?
I don't know what.
You live. You live and you don't die. You know what's interesting? The people that don't live, the people that die. That's what's interesting. That's what I've been writing for Beanie Babies Online for the past 35 years because, God damn it, there are some tragedies in that community. It's wonderful. It's my bread and butter. Oh, I love it. I can't get enough. Oh, wait. God damn it. There's a whole mob coming at me. I gotta go. All right, well, stop doing your show. Yeah,
no.
Retire early,
God.
Die. Do something interesting and die. Bye. Ted, gotta go.
Yeah.
Ted Cobb out. Later.
Oh, shit. I can't believe Ted Cobb just called it. Emerson, get back here, Emerson.
Wait, did you say Ted Cobb? I just petted my cat. You said Ted Cobb?
Ted Cobb called us.
Oh, man, my internet was cutting out again.
And this guy.
I feel like it does that whenever someone calls in. It's really weird.
Listen, don't be jealous that I spoke to Ted Cobb, because
Yeah.
let me tell you, I did not enjoy that man.
Really? Oh, that's a bummer.
Never meet your idols. He's not doing his best work.
Okay, I had a couple of thoughts. The opening, we get Faye saying like to our French Canadian
Passengers?
yeah, I don't know your beautiful language. Like, okay. We see Lowell enter in the background, and then it cuts to it cuts to Joe sitting at the counter, and like Lowell's already seated. So I was like, okay, like I like the blocking, but also like I feel like they could have given it a couple more seconds to let him. But then in the background of that whole scene, we have some really fun late 80s, early 90s fashion.
Ooh.
Like lots of girls like in like white boots and stuff. And we have this guy carrying a ski board.
Yes. I was like, what is that?
Yeah, like almost like a skim board. No,
It's like a paddle board or something?
maybe, yeah. Yeah, it's like some kind of like the water version of a snowboard.
It was huge, but also kind of compact. If it were like, I was like, is that a wind sail? Do you remember people used to go windsurfing all the time?
Maybe it was that. Like, I know that a lot of times those will have like a keel that goes down underwater, so the board kind of rises up out of the water, and maybe we're just not seeing that component of it. Like maybe it folds in or something.
To talk about Norman Cliff a little more, I find it interesting that like the show kind of takes for granted that you know these characters, which obviously I think anyone watching Wings would know them. But if you discovered this show in a time capsule and you'd never seen Cheers or Wings before, you know, some jokes are really only funny if you know who these guys are. Like,
I had that same thought. Oh my God, that's so funny. Yeah.
like in the beginning where Brian makes a joke.
You know how the fishing is over on Nantucket?
Yeah, I hear they're biting like pit bulls at a mailman convention.
And Cliff gets so angry because, of course, we know he's a mailman, but they never say in the Wings that he's a mailman.
Right. I love that line when like I think maybe Brian asks like, is he like that with everybody? And he goes, oh, he doesn't need people.
Yeah, that was a great line.
Yeah.
And my other favorite Cliff line, other than the clams erogenous zones, was when, you know, Joe asks them like, hey, why are you guys here? Aren't you supposed to be out fishing? And he's like, oh, we were walking by and we fell victim to its unique charms.
Yes. Yeah, we don't have a place like this in Boston.
Yeah, see there, we know that they drink at Cheers, but the Wings universe doesn't know that. I'm going to write my second Yelp review for the club car, and I'm just going to say like, oh, I was strolling by on my way to go fishing, and I fell victim to its unique charms.
Did you write that previous one?
I'm just going to lie to the audience and say I already did, but I forgot. But
okay.
I will write them some reviews.
I've been needing to do that too. I actually never got around to it as well.
Oh, damn, and I'm supposed to leave a review for my dentist. I promised him. Yeah.
I did that for a restaurant, the Morrison in Burbank. We had like a great waitress, and she was like, write us a review. And so it took me a couple of weeks, but I finally remembered to.
Make sure I remember to do that.
Oh, so we learn in this episode that Lowell's family lives on a boat. So we knew that Lowell and his wife lived on a boat. Now we learn that his family does.
We learned he has kids.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming. He's got kids.
He has at least two because he refers to them in the plural, or he talks about, his youngest one.
The little one.
So I added that to the Lowell list. He has children, and also that he's allergic to ragweed, and he also thought he might be possessed by Satan in this episode.
Yeah, he thinks that like having a sneezing fit is somehow equivalent to being possessed by Satan.
Yeah, that line didn't do it for me. I'm like, okay, lol.
Yeah, same. In one of the scenes, Helen like pours coffee, and then she's carrying the old half and half carton, and it's that like kind of gray and pink one that we had growing up. It was like such a throwback to like grocery stores from when I was a kid. Did you have Ralph's up in the Bay Area growing up?
No, we had Albertsons and Safeway.
I love that like Norman and Cliff see getting closer to the water as like a victory. It's like, oh yeah, we made it closer to the water. You were drinking a beer, to like celebrate or something.
Yeah, they're just making their way down the main strip in Nantucket, stopping for beer everywhere they go.
Which I love. I love a day like that. Like, I would love to go to Nantucket, and just like wander the small town and just like stop in at different restaurants and have like a pint here and there and like enjoy like the different foods.
Is Catalina Island kind of the Southern California equivalent to Nantucket?
I don't think so. I think Nantucket is like a more established city.
I've never been to either location.
I've been to Catalina. Catalina is pretty neat, but it feels more like just like a day trip touristy sort of. My guess is that Catalina Island is like a tenth of the size of
But there are people that live kind of their whole life on Catalina Island.
See, my guess would be no, but
is Catalina Island a good place to pull a Norman Cliff and just kind of go day drinking everywhere?
Yes. Yeah, we should do that. Yeah, so Catalina Island's population is 4,096 as of 2010. And then Nantucket.
Yeah, that was, I think you said that's like 11,000 before.
Yeah, 11,000. So, I guess it is only like 2.5 times.
Little less than half, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I haven't explored like the, every aspect of Catalina, but.
You just did the pub crawl.
Because you have to take like a catamaran boat out there. They had like the tickets on Groupon, and so I bought one, and my buddy Sean also bought one, and we were chatting about it, and they were gonna expire, so we were like, let's just go. And so the two of us went, and it was like we had like a day date on Catalina Island.
It really was like Norman Cliff.
Yeah, without any drinking.
Did you get to fish?
We did a glass bottom boat, and we rented bicycles and like rode the bikes, which I will say, like, if I go back, I'm definitely gonna do an electric bike next time. There's lots of hills and stuff, and it's way more of a workout than I was expecting.
Sounds lovely.
Hey, so what the fuck is a Doodletown Piper?
I do not know, but yeah, Joe, that was a lie. Joe did not audition for the Doodletown Pipers.
Yeah.
But I love in that club car scene when Brian and Joe first start getting into it, and Helen says something, and Brian just brushes her off by handing her a napkin and saying, "Make a puppet."
Yeah, that was so funny.
Like, I hate seeing sweet Helen rebuked in that way, but it was tremendously funny, especially the way Steven Weber delivered it.
Actually, yeah, that might be like my favorite Steven Weber moment of the episode. They're talking about, like Joe's accusing him of stealing focus the same way he did when he was getting his confirmation. Joe, like Brian's like, I had an asthma attack. And besides, I spent the whole day talking about you. And then Helen's like, to the priest?
Yes, which was like, I'm like, come on, that's a Faye line.
Yeah, but I thought it was still pretty funny.
It was a great setup to make a puppet.
I love that, like, when Helen realizes that Joe has dragged her so that he doesn't look quite as pathetic, trying to like butt into like Brian and Ted's lunch date. She's like, why would I come to lunch? I work at a lunch counter. And then Brian says the same thing. Like, why would she come here for lunch? She works at a lunch counter. And that made me laugh, like the kind of the same phrasing. Hey, you know what I was just thinking about, by the way? Like this 1960s and 1970s easy listening vocal group founded by Ward Ells. I think they're called the Doodletown Pipers.
Do they exist?
They existed. The Doodletown Pipers, also known as the Doodletown... also known as the New Doodletown Pipers, were a 1960s and 1970s easy listening vocal group founded by Ward Ellis, George Wilkins, Bernie Brillstein, and Jerry Weintraub. They made numerous appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show and stuff like that. Okay. So they must have been just kind of like an easy butt of a joke.
Where does also a joke an old man would write?
Yeah.
Where does Brian even come up with that lie to interject to Ted? Is Joe a singer and we just haven't learned that yet about him?
But you know what it would be like the equivalent of is like one of us making a cop rock joke.
Yes.
And then someone like 20 years down the line being like, what the fuck is cop rock? When I was doing improv over at the UCB theater, we were doing a scene and I like threw out cop rock. None of like my teammates who were all like 10 years younger than me knew what the fuck cop rock was. And I was like, oh my God, how do you guys like not know? And I realized that like cop rock was just such a cultural cornerstone for like a year. Like every late night host had to make a joke about cop rock. It was just the butt of jokes. Like, you know, on the playground, we were just making fun of like, it's a police procedural musical.
Yeah, from like the producers of NYPD Blue and stuff like that too.
Botchko.
It's like one of those things, you're right, where it's in the ether for like 6 months to a year, and it seems like no one will stop talking about it, but then it just disappears.
Yeah. Oh, I wrote down that Ted Cobb has definitely hunted man.
Yes.
Oh, what do you mean, the most dangerous game? Sure, of course I've hunted. I also love when like Brian's trying to like fluff up Joe. He's like, yeah, like remember that time you did this? And he's like, that was you. Remember that time you did? Wait, that was me too. And he goes, wow, what a life I've led.
I'm happy again that this is the third episode in a row where there was no Helen used to be fat jokes.
Yeah, in fact, like I don't think there were really any like things that wouldn't fly nowadays.
There was a joke Cliff made about Irish people drinking, but I feel like that's still okay for people to mock the Irish for enjoying alcoholic beverages.
Me being, I think, well, I think I look more Irish than I am, but I still have Irish blood, and I do love that alcohol.
Are you one of the guys that is like 1/10 Irish, but you totally lean into it and have the pride?
No, I've always kind of said that I'm like more Norwegian, but my brother got one of the 23andMe tests, and I think that it said that we were actually more Irish than we thought we were. I don't try to make false claims. I try to like be.
But do you go all out for St. Paddy's Day?
No. In fact, I often forget to wear green. Just hoping I get pinched.
That's our episode of Wings.
Should we give it a rating? Do you want to do that now?
I'm ready to rate this one.
I think well, do you mind if I go first?
Yes. No, of course not.
0 stripes.
What?
I'm just kidding. I think I'll go 3 stripes. I thought it was like a pretty, well, you know what? Yeah, let's go 3 stripes. It's fun having Norman Cliff in there. Like the A plot, the A storyline isn't my favorite, but I thought that there were some funny moments. I was like leaning 2.5 based on the A storyline, but I'm giving it that extra half bump because of Norman Cliff and their day drinking adventure.
It's a 3-stripe episode for me. Love Norman Cliff being there. I love that, you know, I didn't have to clutch my pearls and wasn't offended by anything in this. I would have liked to see a better presence of Lowell and Helen, but the trade-off is we get some Norman Cliff action, which is just super fun. And I'm so excited that Cheers and Wings have officially been married together. Like, we can now talk about the Wings expanded universe, and I couldn't be more thrilled about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we sign out for the day, we had a listener question, and I'm just gonna throw this at you and see what you think. Okay, we had a listener question from Anthony, and he writes, with shows that I love from the past, I love to ask the question, who would I cast today if the show was rebooting? In the hot seat, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, like when I shows from the past, questions I like to ask are stuff like, where can I buy it on DVD? Where can I buy it on Blu-ray? Are there any like cutting room floor? I'm just kidding. So do you want to go first? I haven't really had a chance to think about this yet, but
I'm surprising you with this. So I had more time to think about this, so I can go first.
Okay.
So I'm thinking kind of how reboots today are more like revivals, like they tend to have legacy characters in them. Mm-hmm. So I think I'd go with that, and I would leave Tim Daly and Crystal Bernard in the cast. And I know enough about Wings to know that I think in the final season they're married and all of that. We have them at Tom Nevers Field, and at this point the airport has been kind of redesigned, so it could look new and updated. And I imagine they're both working at Sandpiper Air. Now that Sandpiper Air will be like the big airport. They'll have more planes. And the Little Fish will be a smaller airline. And I want Hannibal Buress to run the smaller airline. And they'll still have the antagonism between Joe and Hannibal, kind of like Roy and Joe have. only, it'll be a David and Goliath kind of thing. So Joe can still be kind of the butt of Hannibal's jokes and whatnot. And I want them to have a daughter who kind of works at the front counter, maybe has her own dreams and ambitions. And I think Maya Hawke from Stranger Things, and I think she could kind of be the Brian of the dynamic, have kind of a lot of the character traits of Brian. And I like Helen maybe sold her restaurant, and now she's maybe occasionally busking in the airport, playing music for people to enjoy, and she helps around, managing Sandpiper Air as well. And instead of Helen's food counter, there should be like a corporate kind of Starbucks in there. I think Amber Midthunder could play that role. She was in Prey, and I think she's on some TV shows. That'd be interesting to see.
She's like the star of Prey.
Yeah, the movie Prey.
I watched that. Yeah,
Predator.
I thought it was very, very good.
I don't know why, but I could see her kind of running the Starbucks in the airport. And for comic relief, instead of the Lowell character, I'd like to see Kyle Mooney in there, but he would play a TSA security officer.
I saw Kyle Mooney at a local bar like a week ago.
Performing or just drinking?
Just drinking.
Oh.
Like he like had like one beer, and then like an Uber came and picked him up, and he went off to his wherever's.
Yeah.
But I think he might be like local to this area somewhat.
Yes.
To like the Neela, the Northeast LA area.
Yeah, and I'd like to see him as a bumbling TSA security officer.
Okay.
And,
yeah, he would be great.
And lastly, just because I think he's hilarious, I'd like to throw in Brent Weinbach as maybe a pilot for Sandpiper Air.
Sure. I think those are all good. I think that for like the Joe, kind of like the stiffer sort of like, anal kind of guy, I'd probably cast Jarred. And then for like the cooler Brian guy, I'd probably go for a little Emerson.
Well, I appreciate you getting us some work here in your fantasy, but
neither of us are actors.
That does it for this week's Wings Nuts. We'll be back next week with season 2, episode 3, entitled A Little Nightmare Music. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We do fun things like put up Brian's tire reports. And we conduct polls on both Spotify and Twitter. So feel free to visit us there. And we'd like to thank EJ Fojas for our theme music.
Thank you, EJ.
Emerson, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you, EJ, for talking to me about it. And hey, I wish I could be a little bit more like you.
I wish I could be a little more like you too, Emerson.